Hello everyone, Nick the DM here with the last video for March of the Modrons. Today we're taking a look at Primus, the supreme modron and ruler of Regulus. Primus is the modron's supreme overlord, lawful, cold, and calculating. If the modron society is a human body, Primus is the brain, organizing and instructing the rest of the modrons either directly or indirectly through the modron hierarchy. Unlike the other modron ranks, there is only ever one Primus. Primus represents the ideal of perfect logic. Its true goals remain inscrutable, but many presume it seeks to spread logic and the rule of law throughout the multiverse. The only known origin of Primus comes from 4th edition after the Prime Architect sacrificed itself to create the modrons. The greatest and most powerful of those modrons joined together in the energy pool of Mechanus to fuse and create Primus. This, of course, is only the 4th edition origin for Primus. Earlier editions make no mention to the creation of Primus or the modrons. I talked more on this in my D&D lore video that I made on the modrons, so check that out for the full modron creation myth. Primus has been known to appear in one of two forms: a medium androgynous human figure with 2 arms, a bald head, and an expressionless face, or a gargantuan humanoid with the same form but its hands are masked. The right one is swathed in bright rainbow hues, and the left is cloaked in inky swirling clouds. Both forms have no lower half. From the waist down, Primus merges with the energy pool of Mechanus, the very lifeblood of the modrons. Primus resides within the energy pool, which is located within the Tower of Primus, a 41-story structure comprised of rectangular blocks, each stacked slightly askew from the previous one to form a spiral hovering within the sky over Regulus. The skin of the tower shifts from black as night to bright and shiny, seemingly at the whim of its master. Within the tower, alongside Primus and the energy pool, is the Infinity Web. Quote, "The hub of the largest network of information in the cosmos. The Infinity Web is a mesh of mechanical sensors and fleshy strands, accessible by Primus within the sanctum of its tower. Through this device, the One in the Prime senses all modrons under its command, and through it, Primus's orders are passed down through the complex chain of viceroys, governors, captains, and so on to reach every modron, no matter where it might be in the multiverse." End quote. Primus's divine status varies between sources from different editions. Some list Primus as a greater deity within Mechanus and being basically unknown of by mortals of the other planes. Other editions say that Primus is an intermediate deity. The reason for this is because technically within modron society, the only creatures that are actually aware of Primus are the Secundi, with any clerical abilities that the modrons possess in earlier editions being a result of power passed down through the chain of command. A Decaton cleric would worship a Nonaton, which would worship Octons, and all the way up the ranks with the power actually originating from Primus. But not every modron is aware of the source of this power. Regardless of divine rank and status, Primus's sole concern is for the modrons. It does not send avatars to other planes or even take part in the normal bickering and wars that occupy the other planar powers. Though it does use the orrery to keep track of events on other planes, it rarely interferes unless it sees a direct threat. It devotes most of its energy to perfecting and protecting Regulus and its inhabitants. Contrary to popular belief, the death of Primus does not throw modron society into chaos. Like all gaps, that vacancy is immediately filled by promotion of a Secundus. That creature immediately gains the powers of the old Primus, but not its memory or plans. Thus, it usually takes a bit of time for the new Primus to determine the state of the planes and of Regulus and decide what needs to be done. During this period of adjustment, some chaos can enter the perfection of modron society. Some scholars have mistakenly interpreted this situation as civil war within the orderly modron race, but it's merely confusion resulting from the temporary lack of direction. The first act of the new Primus is to restore order to its race, a process which can take some time. The only time Primus was known to have been killed before was the Rogue March, when Tenebris used the last word to kill the one in the Prime and take its place. This Primus, being what we can assume was the original, then became a vestige, a source of power that you can make a pact with for additional power like a warlock does. This meant that the consciousness of the Primus killed by Tenebris still existed, but in an almost ghostly form to grant power with those who made a deal with it. This vestige is listed in Dragon Magazine, issue 341. 4th edition gives an interesting take on Primus. Quote, "At the end of each cycle, the one in the Prime undergoes disassembly and renewal. This process gives rise to thousands of new modrons, replenishing those that perished in the preceding cycle. The new Primus, formed from one of the secundi that attend it, spends some time familiarizing itself with its new existence, then begins directing underlings according to its inscrutable plan." End quote. This would mean that every 17 years, a new Primus is created. This is another case of 4th edition changing or adding to the lore that we had previously known. As with all lore, the DM can decide whether or not to include this, or stick to the lore from earlier editions. Personally, I don't like this Primus recycling, because it takes time for a new Primus to understand its role and create new plans, as I mentioned earlier. This would give each Primus limited time to work as the brain of modron society. Earlier editions of Dungeons & Dragons have given Primus stats as they did with many other deities. Depending on each party or adventurers, some DMs may stat deities, others may stat avatars, and some may decide not to stat either. We know that Primus does not send avatars to other planes and has not been mentioned to use avatars at all. Perhaps Primus itself is an avatar of the Prime Architect that became the Modron race. This would explain why when a Primus dies, another can be created by a Secundus entering the energy pool, yet still have the status of a deity. I will not be statting Primus for this video, but I may talk further on statting deities in a later video at a later time. But for those of you who like statting creatures, I will give a brief comparison between the advanced D&D Tiamat and Primus stat blocks, because Tiamat has 5th edition stats at least for her avatar. Primus is shown to have a lower armor class than Tiamat, but higher hit points and a higher to hit bonus. Despite it never being mentioned that Primus can leave or has left the energy pool of Mechanus, the stats list that Primus has 2 movement speeds, normal ground speed and flying speed. Both of Primus's speeds are the same, but we can say that Primus has a greater ground speed than Tiamat, but less fly speed, which based on the movement speeds for Tiamat in Rise of Tiamat, we can assume that Primus's movement speed can be somewhere between 60 and 120 feet, both on foot and while flying. It is also listed that Primus can only make one attack on its turn, and that it would deal extreme amounts of damage, specifically 20d8 in earlier editions. The type of damage is not listed, but we can assume it is either radiant or necrotic based on the swirling rainbow lights and the inky black clouds surrounding one of Primus's hands. It is mentioned in earlier editions that Primus can cast spells equal to that of a 30th level cleric and is a 25th level spellcaster. We can take that to mean that Primus has multiple types of abilities allowing it to cast spells, both innately and probably learned, and that Primus would have access to all cleric spells and many of those in the wizard category as well. Additionally, Primus has a telepathic range throughout the entirety of Mechanus, so any creature on Mechanus that Primus wishes to reach directly will be reached via telepathy. This also helps Primus keep contact with the Secundi and all other creatures that he wishes to contact, because he will not contact any modrons lower than the Secundi rank for the purpose of their communication via the hierarchy. Also, Primus appeared to be immune to most magic. Though of course this is if you wish to keep the stats comparable. Any DM can stat any creature as they wish for their respective settings and for the level of the party and the encounter. And that is it for the lore and information of Primus, a powerful being of complete order and logic. Though the information on Primus is limited, that which we know is very usable and often set in stone between editions, with the exception of some 4th edition lore. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Subscribing will really help me and my channel out, and tell your friends who like D&D about this channel. The more it grows, the more content I'm able to make. This is also the last video in March of the Modrons, as I mentioned in the beginning. I've covered every aspect of Modron life and society. This was a great project, and I may try something like this in the future. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!